Manny Khoshbin's garage is the kind of place that rewires your sense of scale. Cars that most people only ever see behind ropes at museums sit parked side by side, some so rare that even seasoned collectors have never laid eyes on them in person. And the wild part is that none of this was inevitable. Manny didn't come from old money, motorsport royalty, or generational wealth. He built everything himself, step by step, and the garage you're about to see is the byproduct of decades of obsession, timing, and very calculated taste. If you enjoy stories that go deeper than price tags, the kind that explain why certain cars matter and how collections like this are actually built, you'll want to stick around. And once you see what's inside this garage, you'll understand why people consider it one of the most important private car collections in the world. Before we walk through the cars themselves, though, you need to understand how Manny approaches collecting, because it explains every decision that follows. Collector mindset. Manny doesn't buy cars just because they're expensive or fast. He looks for cars that say something about engineering, design, or a very specific moment in time. Limited production matters, but rarity alone isn't enough. The car has to feel irreplaceable, like removing it from the collection would leave a hole that nothing else could fill. Timing also plays a huge role. Manny has a history of buying cars before the market fully understands them, long before auction headlines and price spikes follow. In some cases, cars that were once questioned or overlooked became centerpieces years later. And when something no longer fits his vision, he has no problem letting it go. The goal isn't to own everything, it's to own the right things. That mindset is why his garage feels curated instead of crowded. There's a clear line between cars meant to be driven and cars meant to be preserved. And that balance becomes obvious the moment you look at what he actually uses day to day. Everyday cars. Even with access to hypercars worth tens of millions, Manny doesn't treat every drive like a performance event. When he's running errands or spending time with his family, he gravitates toward cars that are comfortable, quiet, and easy to live with. Vehicles like the Tesla Model X make sense in that context, not because they're flashy, but because they remove friction from daily life. That practicality extends to other parts of the garage too. Modern Porsches and AMG vehicles give him speed and character without the stress that comes with driving something irreplaceable. These are cars he can take to breakfast, sit in traffic with, and park without thinking twice. And that's what makes the next tier of the collection so compelling. Because once you understand that Manny separates usability from significance, it becomes clear why some of the cars you're about to see exist purely to push boundaries, not convenience. Limited production icons. Before the collection goes fully into museum-grade territory, there's an important middle ground where Manny's taste really shows. These are cars that are undeniably rare and wildly valuable, but still built to be driven hard without a pit crew standing by. They sit in that sweet spot where engineering ambition meets real-world usability. Take the Porsche 935. It's one of those cars that looks like it escaped from a race transporter by accident. Wide, low, and unapologetically aggressive, it was never meant to blend in, and Manny leaned fully into that by speccing his in the Martini livery. With only 77 built worldwide, it already carried serious weight when it left the factory, and today its value reflects just how special it is. Yet despite its track-focused roots, it still represents something Porsche does better than almost anyone else: building extreme machines that don't feel fragile. The same philosophy shows up in his Ford GT Heritage Edition. This isn't just another modern supercar with a throwback paint job. It's a deeply intentional homage to Ford's racing history, produced in extremely limited numbers and specced in a way that makes it feel more like a statement than a commodity. Manny has openly said he plans to sell it at the right time, which says a lot about how he views cars as both passion projects and long-term assets. Then there's the Mercedes-A MGGT Black Series P 1 Edition, a car that exists because modern AMG decided to go all in. It's loud, physical, and demanding in a way that modern performance cars rarely are anymore. Manny has mentioned that every drive feels intense, not sanitized, and that's exactly why it earns its place here. The McLaren P1 and the Saleen S7. Twin turbo round out this category perfectly. The P1 represents the moment hybrid hypercars stopped being theoretical and started rewriting expectations. The S7, on the other hand, is pure old-school excess, massive power, brutal presence, and almost impossible to replicate today. Together, they show that Manny values moments in automotive history just as much as numbers on a spec sheet. Bugatti obsession. If there's one brand that anchors Manny Khoshbin's collection emotionally and philosophically, it's Bugatti. Not because of badge prestige alone, but because Bugatti operates in a space where engineering ambition ignores practicality entirely. These cars aren't designed to make sense. They're designed to prove a point. His Bugatti journey starts with the Veyron, a car that quietly changed the rules for everyone else. When it launched, it wasn't just fast. It forced the entire industry to rethink what was mechanically possible in a road car. Manny's example stands out even among Veyrons, finished as a one-off specification that immediately separates it from standard production cars. Even now, decades later, the Veyron still feels excessive in a way modern hypercars often don't. Then there's the Veyron Rembrandt edition, which pushes Bugatti's philosophy even further. This isn't just a car inspired by art, it literally incorporates it. Bronze elements, sculptural details, and references to Rembrandt Bugatti's work turn the vehicle into something closer to a moving exhibition than a performance machine. Manny has barely driven it, and that restraint feels intentional. Some cars are preserved not because they're fragile, but because their meaning would be diluted through overuse. And then there's the Bolide, which almost feels like a Bugatti without filters. It's raw, temperamental, and borderline impractical by design. Starting it feels closer to prepping a race car than turning a key, and that's precisely the appeal. It represents Bugatti at its most extreme, stripped of compromise. The Hermes hypercar era. At the peak of Manny's, collection sits a chapter that feels less like automotive ownership and more like patronage. The Hermes collaborations aren't about speed records or lap times. They're about control, patience, and the willingness to let craftsmanship take precedence over convenience. It started with the Pagani Huayra Hermes, the first car born from a direct collaboration between Horacio Pagani's team and Hermes. This wasn't a package or trim level. It was a multi-year project that required constant back and forth, with Manny personally funding travel and development to make sure nothing was rushed. The result is a car that feels deeply personal, down to the textures, color tones, and even the luggage designed specifically for it. It's no surprise that this Huayra ended up displayed at the Peterson Museum. It was never meant to blend into a garage. The Bugatti Chiron Hermes took that concept even further. From the exterior paint to the smallest interior details, every decision was debated and refined. Manny has said the design was changed multiple times before final approval, and that level of iteration is rare even at this price point. The finished car doesn't shout. It communicates quietly, which somehow makes it even more powerful. The McLaren Speedtail Hermes, though no longer in Manny's possession, completes the story. Sending a brand new Speedtail directly to Hermes for an 18-month transformation wasn't about resale value or recognition. It was about exploring how far customization could go when no shortcuts are allowed. Even the etched coordinates on the mirrors tell you this wasn't built to impress crowds. It was built to satisfy one owner's vision. Together, These cars represent the moment Manny's collection crossed from extraordinary into untouchable. At this level, performance becomes secondary. What matters is authorship, permanence, and creating something that simply won't exist again. If you're enjoying how deep this collection goes, not just the price tags, but the stories and decisions behind each car, make sure you're subscribed. We're breaking down collections like this the right way, and what comes next only gets more interesting. Cars that came and went. One of the biggest misconceptions about Manny Khoshbin's garage is that once a car enters, it stays forever. In reality, his collection is constantly evolving. Cars come in, get refined, appreciated, and sometimes quietly move on. Not because they weren't special, but because their chapter was complete. The McLaren Speedtail Hermes is a perfect example. It wasn't sold because it lacked value or meaning. It was sold because it had already achieved exactly what it was meant to be, a fully realized one-off collaboration, finished, documented, and preserved at its peak. Letting it go didn't diminish the collection, it strengthened it. Manny has always been open about the fact that he sees cars as living assets. He enjoys the process just as much as the ownership, speccing them, wading through long development timelines, refining details, and then deciding when the moment is right to move on. That mindset keeps the collection dynamic instead of static. You see this approach repeated across multiple cars he's owned over the years, especially within the Mercedes SLR lineup and certain Porsche models. Some were bought early before the market fully recognized their importance. Others were acquired because they represented a specific era or idea worth preserving. What makes this strategy work is patience. Manny isn't chasing hype cycles or flipping cars impulsively. He's building layers, allowing the collection to grow, shift, and mature over time. That's why even the cars that leave still feel like essential parts of the story, rather than missing pieces. What makes this collection so valuable? The value of Manny Khoshbin's collection doesn't come from sheer quantity or headline prices alone. It comes from how carefully each car fits into a larger narrative of rarity, timing, and intent. Many of the cars are limited production models acquired at exactly the right moment, often before their long-term significance was fully understood. Others are true one-offs, built through direct factory relationships that simply aren't available to most buyers, regardless of wealth. Provenance also plays a massive role. Cars tied to major collaborations, first-of-their-kind builds, or landmark moments in automotive history tend to age differently in the market. Manny's garage is full of examples where the story behind the car matters just as much as the car itself. Put it all together, and you're looking at a carefully assembled portfolio where passion and strategy intersect. And that's how a collection reaches 9 figures without feeling accidental. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to see more collections, stories, and machines like this, not just what they cost, but why they matter, hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned. There's a lot more coming.